Today's video is going to be my final thoughts on Resident Evil 4. This is the new one, not the classic one that came out many moons ago. If you like this content, please subscribe and like the channel. It helps me out a ton. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this review. Resident Evil 4, I think, is a real turning point for the series in a lot of different ways. And if you look historically at kind of where Resident Evil started from and where it's ultimately ended up, minus these remasters, of course, like maybe Resident Evil 7 or 8, you can see a lot of elements that worked over the years and a lot of elements that didn't work over the years. Now, what makes Resident Evil truly Resident Evil, I think for many people, myself included, is you do have this kind of over-the-top, outlandish horror. And you do have some kind of campy writing. And no, I'm not talking about the master of lockpicking, but the premise and the plot sometimes is a little goofy. But it's always grounded in a sense of reality, and most importantly, a sense of dread, which gives you, the player, a sense of urgency in doing whatever you're doing. Typically, this is done by giving you less ammo than you need to kill all the enemies. Or in the case of some of the previous Resident Evil series, having enemies that never stop chasing you and could not be destroyed by normal means. There were always these moments where you were kind of gritting your teeth, anticipation, the music starts to swell up. You turn the corner, you have 3 bullets left and there's 7 zombies. What are you going to do? And I love that about Resident Evil games. And thankfully, for the most part, this game, I think, really kind of nailed that focus. However, and I'll talk about this in a moment, it got a little goofy towards the end, even for Resident Evil's sake, all right? So let's get started with the things that I absolutely adored. And there is a lot. First and foremost, this game is absolutely gorgeous. It is such a beautiful game. I played it on the 60 frame per second mode, and I loved the silky smooth animation. I loved the way that the levels were designed to take advantage of maybe a less than optimal draw distance, but it looked so well and it ran so great. And if you have the ability to play this on an OLED television, do yourself a favor and play this on an OLED television. The sheer horror and dread of dark corridors that you cannot see down. The very distinguished color palettes, particularly in some of the underground sections where there's a lot of torches and sconces, looked so good in this game. And I think that the OLED and the kind of the HDR element, but really more the OLED, really makes this game pop. And to me, and I say this a lot, but I mean it every time I say it, this is absolutely a showcase game for PlayStation 5. I'm sure it looks great on Xbox as well. I played it on PlayStation 5, but this is actually one of those games I feel like if you were inviting somebody over and you said, hey, do you want to see a super realistic looking, gorgeous game? There are scenes in Resident Evil 4 that would just make your jaw drop. Absolutely no doubt about it. As I mentioned also, the gameplay is really well. That loop of finding items and crafting items and building up an arsenal is a very rewarding power experience. Of course, you're going to always have a little money on top. The merchant is conveniently located throughout the world to kind of let you save your game and to buy weapons and attachments and upgrades for your favorite gun to make them even more powerful. And what's so cool is about at the midpoint of the game, just when you think the upgrades and all of that kind of stops, there's actually a whole second set of menu options essentially, and the upgrades and the progression gets even deeper. And that was really cool that the game kind of evolved. It wasn't like, okay, here's all the upgrades at the beginning. They kind of drip feed through the guns and through some of the upgrades that you're going to progress through, which was nice because I never felt like the weapons were stagnant. I always was getting something new, a different weapon, a different modification, something that kind of made the gameplay satisfying. As you guys know, I am a huge fan of my Shithell 2 with my high-end Sennheiser headphones. This game sounds so good. The sound design of you walking and hearing all of your gear kind of clank, the howling of the wind, the creaky floorboards, the moaning of the enemies, the wet guttural sounds when you blow away said enemies, the torches, the voice acting, everything was so good. On PlayStation 5, you have the option to have the kind of the radio or the in-ear piece dialogue actually play through the DualSense controller as opposed to your normal sound. And I really liked that because it gave it a tinny sound. It was just a very simple kind of change from what you would normally expect. But I liked that it did feel much more like a radio when you were playing. And I thought that was a neat little touch. That weapon play and that sense of dread, like I said, it just oozes through this game. You're always going to feel like you're not really equipped, and there's going to be times you kind of just limp through with like low health and no ammo, and you turn the corner and there's a big treasure room to kind of like restock, and it's such a great feeling, and I really do like that quite a bit. The story was fine. I wouldn't say the story was like the craziest story ever. If you played Resident Evil 4, this is pretty much that. There's a couple minor twists and turns along the way that were somewhat different. Some of the areas from the original game were expanded upon. Some of the boss fights were slightly different, that sort of thing. But for the most part, it stayed true to the original concept. The idea that there is this weird, creepy cult using these little alien-looking symbiote kind of things, hell-bent on nefarious schemes, and it's up to Leon to go in and kind of clean house. As with all the other Resident Evil games, this one continued that great tradition of having really cool lore to read that kind of gives you a teaser of what to expect. You'd read something like a lab experiment gone awry, and guess what? The next enemy you're going to fight is going to be said lab experiment. Or you're going to have to read through some of the notes to find various puzzles in the game or to unlock different routes or different weapons. And because of how the game is kind of progressed by reading all these things, it kind of gives you a sense of what's next to come. And I like that. Something they did add that was not in the original game are these really fun side missions to go back and do. Missions that would require you to loop back to an earlier part of the level to fight an incredibly difficult enemy at a chance of getting a better reward. Or backtracking for, shooting the blue medallions or killing the rats or that sort of thing. There's a whole side mission element to this game that was off the quote-unquote golden path that I absolutely adored. And I thought that was such a cool way to kind of force you, if you wanted to really explore the world. For the most part, it is a very linear game. There are some routes that diverge, like do you want to go left or right, but then they ultimately fork back together. That said, going and doing some of these other side missions really kind of encourages you to take your time to navigate through the level and to see what is out there. And I thought that was really, really fun. I really enjoyed that. So that was really, really cool. And then the shooting gallery is a ton of fun. Try out all the weapons, get a high score, allows you to unlock various perks that will help you like build ammo more effectively or have a higher resale value on an item, just to name a few. That was really a lot of fun and a kind of quirky distraction from like the main core of the game. But it is not without its faults. And I saved kind of the worst for last because that's kind of how this game was structured, actually. The last third of the game was just bonkers. It was a complete departure of everything I have just spent the last 9 minutes telling you guys about. There were no puzzles in the last third of the game. It was insane. It was just total run and gun. You would go into a room and there would be like 30 weapon barrels that you could kick, and inside would be magnum ammo and gunpowder and submachine gun ammo and tons of first aid, because you would fight tons and tons and tons of dudes, like waves of people, like an overwhelming amount of enemies, unrealistic amount of enemies, to the point that you would be just like standing in the corner and there'd be like 9 enemies turning the corner. You're just shooting into the pile of them. And it took away from everything I said that worked so well in that first, actually 2/3 of the game. It was almost like a different design team came in to finish the game. It was such a wild departure. And the fact that you got away from the lore notes and from the puzzles, and it just turned into a kind of shooting exhibition. This game is not really controlled very well for that. Leon, despite being this super awesome secret agent, police, former military guy, whatever, his aim isn't that great. He has to stand still for a second and kind of steady himself, and then the reticle will shrink down to give you a better chance at shooting. This game was not meant for turning around corners, 360 no-scoping. A lot of times, Leon almost controls like a tank. It's very difficult to navigate through waves of enemies. You're going to have to basically just shoot your way out. While there is a parrying system and an evasion system, it won't make up for the sheer amount of enemies you have here. So why they included this such a demand on gunplay at the end is a little odd to me, personally. There were also a lot of elements where the game was just too dark. And Leon does have a flashlight, and he will take it out, but only at very specific times and very specific areas. So you could be walking through a completely pitch black corridor with like a torch at the end of the hallway, right? Think of this like it's setting the mood. You're in this dark cave. All you're seeing is the silhouette of you, maybe the silhouette of Ashley behind you. You're walking very slowly. You got your weapon ready, and you're ready for action. Maybe a third of the way down that hallway, Leon will then pull out his flashlight. And now you have something where you can actually see. You can look at the crates on the ground. You can look at the detail. Make sure you're not stepping in any bear traps or trip mines, looking for puzzles, looking for things to shoot and collectibles on the wall. All the normal stuff you'd expect to do because now you have a flashlight, right? And then just as fast as he pulls it out, he puts it away. And it's still just as dark as it was seconds ago. So they're like hard-coded in these areas where Leon will use a flashlight. And it is odd that it, like I said, in that same hallway, he might pull it out 2 or 3 different times and put it away, which is very bizarre. It's like a programming bug. But more importantly, you don't have the option to take it out whenever you want. And they should just let you do that because there are some areas it is just dark. A lot of this game takes place at night, in the rain, in a dark, creepy house, in caves, in these abandoned like boat docks, in abandoned, underground compounds and that sort of thing. And it's hard to see. And like I said, I love the OLED. I talked about how great the OLED is in this game and how it really does reward you for being able to have a nice TV. Like it really does change the way the game looks. But you need to have the ability to let us use a flashlight. I don't understand. It's not as bad as Doom 3 was, but it's pretty damn close. And I wouldn't be surprised if the PC community found a way to mod this. Unfortunately, you do not have that option on PlayStation 5. It won't ruin your game experience, but you will see, or you will not see, I should say, just how hard it is to look around. And lastly, the one that bothered me the absolute most, that drove me up a freaking wall. If you're going to give me the ability to carry things in my storage case, and you're going to give me an offload storage bay to take things out and that I don't want to currently equip, do not gate what I can and can't take out. I was carrying around, I am not kidding you, probably 7 full boxes of submachine gun ammo because we weren't using the submachine gun at the time. And we were crafting submachine gun ammo, and we were finding submachine gun ammo. And the game will do what it thinks it's best, by the way, in terms of adaptive loot. I didn't really talk about that because I wasn't actually that impressed with the system. But the idea is the game will, there's a random pool of what could be in each barrel, what could be in what area. And if you're sucking up the joint and you need bigger grenades, they'll give you more of those. If you have tons of ammo, they might give you more money. If you have tons of money, they might give you more bullets. Despite all that, I had so much ammo with me, and grenades, and boot knives, and red herbs, and green herbs, and just different things I could not get rid of that I had to carry, and I was constantly juggling my managing and juggling my inventory. Now, the only thing you can put in your storage case is basically weapons and first aid spray. That was about it. So you find this really cool shotgun and you don't want to use it right now? Okay, cool. Put it in the vault. But you know what you're going to carry around? All the bullets. And let me tell you, you're going to find a lot of bullets, especially if they think you should be using the shotgun and they're dropping them all over the place, or you're crafting more shotgun shells. And you're just going to be constantly, if you're like me and you take your time and you want to buy the treasure map and you want to completely explore an area and break every barrel and collect every item, you are constantly going to be juggling for inventory space while your storage is just so full, and it shouldn't be. And I hate that. I think this is something that the PC community has modded. I hope they did, because there were things I could not pick up. I was forcing myself to take and to give herbs to Ashley that I didn't necessarily want to, but I didn't want to lose the inventory that I was leaving behind, because a lot of times, like I said, this is kind of like a one-way trip. You're walking through the map and you're like, oh wow, like 10 magnum bullets or 5 magnum bullets. Well, I'll put these in my inventory for later. Oh, my inventory is full. It's like, well, what do I do? I'd have to craft something that I didn't necessarily want, or take a health item that I didn't necessarily want, just because I didn't want to lose anything, or run all the way to the vendor, try to sell something, run all the way back. It was just very stupid. So that is my definite, that one more than anything else drove me absolutely bananas. But as I wrap up this review, do not let this distract you from the game. I mean, it is definitely far from a perfect game. I know it was nominated for Game of the Year, and I don't think it deserved Game of the Year when it came out, but it is definitely one of the best Resident Evil games. They've taken all their lessons learned with great map design, great control, great sound design, great overall kind of flow of the game, minus that last area, and really put it together in a very solid package. And on top of all that, if you like what you saw, there's DLC. So there's even more to do if you want. I didn't even talk about the DLC, but there's more. There are these challenges where you can run around and do the mercenaries mode where you're trying to get a high score. There are new game modes and new cosmetic items and different weapons you can unlock that increase as you continue to play through the game. It's a very, very solid package. And for that reason, I highly recommend this game. I hope you found my review of Resident Evil 4 interesting. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.